Great. So it's I think it is time. So we're gonna I'm gonna start us off. And one thing wonderful about this session is the format is fireside chat. So there's no like formal chair, even though I am assigned as a chair. And even Jen and Jennifer. So Jen is Jen Scott and Jennifer is Jennifer Howland. And they themselves gonna introduce themselves, and then let's get started.
Great. Thank you, Mickey, very much. And hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Howland, Managing Director at iRelaunch,
And I'm Jen Scott. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships of the Society of Women Engineers.
And we are here together. Well, first of all, we're thankful to the National Science Foundation for sponsoring this really amazing conference. And we're also grateful for the opportunity to contribute. So we really appreciate it. Thank you. And for ease of who's who, I am going to go by Jennifer today, and Jen is going to go by Jen. Jen Scott is going to go by Jen, and it's updated. We both updated our names under our video. So if you aren't sure, you can check there. And then following the introductions, Jen and I will quickly introduce ourselves. We're going to run the session like a fireside chat where it's going to be more informal with Jen and I asking each other some questions. And we're going to be sure to save time at the end for some Q&A. So please, as we are speaking, type your questions in the Q&A. And we definitely want to thank Mickey for our session chair in advance for helping us with the chat and the Q&A. So thank you, Mickey. So I'm going to start with my introduction, and then I'm going to turn it to Jen, and then we'll get into the fireside chat. I wanted to start by saying that iRelaunch is the pioneering company in the career reentry space, and we work with over 100 employers to build and launch their own in-house return to work programs. And we lead a community of over 86,000 relaunchers who we call professionals who are returning to work following a career break from 1 to 20 years. And a little bit about my background or what the role I'm doing now as managing director at iRelaunch. I co-lead the consulting practice with the CEO and co-founder, Carol Fishman-Cohen, and I get to co-lead the STEM Reentry Task Force with my colleague, Jen Scott. And prior to joining iRelaunch, only a year ago, I had a very rewarding career as an engineer, manager, and executive at IBM. And the last 6 years at IBM, my role was to improve the representation of diverse mid-career technical talent throughout the firm. And that's where I started IBM's Tech Reentry program, getting IBM to be part of the founding member cohort of the STEM Reentry Task Force for guidance and support. And now, as I mentioned, I get to co-lead this task force with Jen, and we're going to talk a lot more about the task force in this session. So Jen, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief. So as mentioned, my name is Jen Scott. I work at the Society of Women Engineers, or SWE. I have been at SWE for over 12 years now, and in my role, I and my team work with organizations of all sizes in all locations. We are a global organization in ways to partner with SWE to aspire the future female engineers, and provide professional development and training, the advancement of current engineers, and recognizing everyone's successes. And we really collaborate with these organizations, many of them are corporations, on our mission, which is to empower women to achieve full potential in careers as engineers and leaders, expand the image of engineering and technology professions as a positive force for improving the quality of life, and demonstrate the value of diversity and inclusion. And we have over 42,000 members globally, and it is about an exact 50-50 split between university students and working professionals. And I am the co-founder of the STEM Reentry Task Force. And again, we'll talk in more detail about that later. But the STEM Reentry Task Force is an initiative to increase the number of technical women in the STEM sector by providing support to women who are returning from a career break through partnering with organizations and creating their own return to work program, otherwise known as a returnship. And we also work to really provide or influence structural change in different organizations, whether they're corporate, academic, or government, everyone in the STEM sector, and really promoting that this is a viable source of employing, I'm going to say women always, because I represent SWE, but it's women and men who are in the STEM fields who want to return to work. And then we'll kick it off. So Jennifer, can you, describe for us, what does return to work mean?
Certainly. When we speak about return to work programs, so we've talked about relaunchers, we've talked about return to work programs, and I know some of the sessions have also mentioned this. Most of the formal programs that exist are for returning professionals. And in fact, of the relaunchers that have attended the iRelaunch, the past 28 iRelaunch return to work conferences, 100% hold bachelor's degrees and 70% hold graduate degrees, which is huge. And 92% of those attendees on average are women. The name returnship was coined originally as an internship for relaunchers, but now over time, returnships are typically now more intent to hire programs for targeted roles instead of the internship model for university students, where there are many more internship assignments than full-time roles at the end of the assignment. The two are similar, though, in that they offer both programming and a support structure to maximize the experience for the participants. So that's similar, but they're different in that the return to work programs are typically an intent to hire, where the person is interviewed like they are going to be a full-time employee, but they have this cohort to go through for support and some programming to help them get ready to relaunch. And the next question is really related to what I just answered, and I'm going to ask Jen to answer it. And Jen, are all return to work programs the same? And what have you seen with the STEM Reentry Task Force organizations?
Thanks, Jennifer. So as Jennifer alluded to, they're not all the same. So in the task force, and I'll get into a little bit of the history of the task force and the organizations that are part of it and some of the data around that. But the programs are vastly different. We have programs that are direct hire programs. We have programs that are 12 weeks long. We have programs that are about 6 months long that the companies are running. And then also some companies have returners go into real work positions or real job openings that they currently have in the hopes of converting them directly to that job. And other organizations have returners work on specific project work. So might not be a one-to-one, okay, you do this project or you're in this returnship, then you transition smoothly into this position. It's more of, let's see what kind of work you could do in the field, and we'll find the right match for you after the program ends. So we do see a wide range of programs, length of time, benefits that are offered. Definitely every organization is unique and come at it from their own kind of corporate values. We work with many companies versus government agencies, but we're working with more and more government agencies in this space too. But like, what makes sense for them? What is their corporate culture like? And what kind of a program will be the most successful there? And so that's kind of the range of programs that we're seeing in this space. And I'll delve into right away just the history of the task force, because it's kind of the base of what we're talking about here. It was actually a brainchild of Carol Fitzman Cohen, who's the co-founder of iRelaunch, and had been in the return to work space for many years, working mostly in the financial industry. And I also like to say East Coast. And she came and spoke at one of SWE's annual conferences about returning to work, and had a light bulb moment while she was at one of our conferences in 2015, I think, or maybe it was 2014, and then tracked me down as the person who works with companies who would be interested in starting these types of programs. And through many conversations, she and I came up with the concept of the STEM Reentry Task Force. And many times people will hear me talk about the power of community. Jennifer, too, we talk about it a lot, the power of the cohort. And so the task force itself, we recruit companies to participate each year. And so it's a cohort of companies with cohorts of program managers each year. And the goal is to have them run at least a pilot program within that year, and have a cohort of returners, is what I'm going to call them here, although they're called by many different names. Again, so that support network, that community of support, we're providing it to program managers who are launching the program for the first time or tweaking it. And the companies are providing it to their first and second and continually expanding groups of returners themselves. So in 2015, we announced this to SWE's closest corporate partnership council members, and Jennifer was there, and we basically gave them 2 months to decide if they were going to do it, which now I look back and I'm like, how did anyone join with only 2 months notice, and how are they going to pay for it and organize it, or, trust Carol and I? But they did. And I know Jennifer could talk a little bit about her experience with trying to launch this program at IBM. And that first year we had our maximum number that we want in a cohort, because we want to keep it small, and it was 7. And they just all raised their hands and started right away. And now we have over 32, including this year at 35, 36 organizations participating. We've had over 600 returners in different programs, and the conversion to full-time hires has been 86%. And we're still crunching the numbers from last year. So we expect that number to go up even through COVID. So really exciting times. And again, a really interesting experience having this chat with Jennifer here, who both represents iRelaunch, but also that pilot program manager with IBM's Tech Reentry. So Jennifer, can you share with us what excited you about this and how you got it going?
Yes. First, I want to answer why I wanted to even create a program in the first place. And then I can get into some of how I went about it. And the reason why is I think everyone should know on this session the well-documented shortage of technical skills in the IT industry. And so I needed to think differently to find this mid-career diverse technical talent that I was missioned to improve. And when I read an article about the financial industry running returnships for formal banking executives, and the light bulb went off, and I absolutely knew I needed to create a returnship program for the technical skills in IBM. And I had created a business case, went forward with it, went forward to HR. I was not in HR. And I went forward through HR and got my management, which was an offshoot of the technical community inside of IBM, to be supportive. And they loved the fact that I was not on my own, that Society of Women Engineers, who we had a longstanding partnership with, was going to be behind this. And they didn't know much about iRelaunch at the time. They now know about iRelaunch. And so I got the permission to go ahead and get this launched. And I'll talk a little bit about the successes of the programs in general. And there are many of the same things that I would recommend anyone do to help start their own programs in their own organizations.
And so specifically for this audience too, Jennifer, I think it'd be really helpful to explain what areas you focused on and why, because I know you were focused on the emerging technology, I'm going to say market.
I was. And in 2016, I launched the pilot of the IBM Tech Reentry program. And over the course of the 4 years I was responsible for the program before I retired, we filled open roles in data science and cybersecurity, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, blockchain, to name a few. I mean, the list goes on and on. There were over 100 positions in 4 different countries and over the about 23 different locations around the world. And so this program, I piloted it, I mentioned in 2016, but I piloted it with 5 years ago with 6 data science positions. And right now, fast forward 5 years from now, and we all know what data science means. We all have heard it before. But 5 years ago, that was another story. And when I got my executive sponsor, and she was a vice president in a data science, an area looking for data science, and she wanted to hire 6 data scientists. And I am thinking to myself, how on earth am I going to find data scientists? Because when they were on their breaks, data science was emerging to be a hot field, and no one had experience at all in this field. So I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to find 6 people in 2 different locations? And I found out something very, very interesting about this type of talent that is on break. And every single one did something to get themselves positioned for their relaunch. And I'll give the example of this specific data science skill that I was looking for 5 years ago. And so I had 6 openings. One was and I found 6 people, amazingly. One was an academic who had never worked in industry before, but taught in her university. And she wanted to get experience working in the corporate world. The other 5 had technical backgrounds in industry, but since data science was so new, they didn't have that background. They didn't have any industry experience, but they all upskilled during their breaks. And meaning they saw that data science was a hot field to get into, and they wanted to learn as much as possible during their breaks prior to relaunching. So they were incredibly well positioned to take on something that they had never done before. And for example, some of the things they did, they took courses at their local community colleges. They took MOOCs, which stand for Massive Open Online Courses. Hopefully the audience knows about MOOCs, through platforms like Coursera that partner with large universities and small universities and colleges. They earned certificates in data science from prestigious universities like MIT. So they did a number of things. They went back and got degrees. And this effort by the relaunchers made them absolutely competitive for IBM's program. And that's what you'll see the relaunchers do. And if you're thinking of relaunchers of relaunching, I strongly suggest you do this as well. And we see this across the board with our relauncher community. Our relaunchers are trying to do what they can to upskill and to reskill, to get refreshed during their breaks. And also, they're trying to use their volunteered roles that they may have done or paid roles in a different field or a different line of work that could be having nothing to do with technical field, but they're using those experiences to practice their leadership, and they're bringing those leadership opportunities to their resume where they are able to speak about it in their interview. So just a hint for those thinking of relaunching.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to share also, when Jennifer was looking for the data scientists, I too was super nervous if we would be able to find them. And through all the organizations we've worked with, it's really been amazing the quality of engineers and technologists who have been applying for these positions and wanting to come back from work. And what I miss talking about too is we look at it at the task force 2 years, like a 2-year break, and on up. And we've seen up to 24, someone with a 24, actually more than one person with a 24-year break return successfully to a technical career in management. So it's been a really amazing program. And also different organizations consider the 2-year gap or break looks different, right? So Jennifer had mentioned somebody was in academia. One of our partners, all 3 of their pilot program folks went into education and couldn't get back into industry. So this too is, we're trying to get beyond those kind of reasons why resumes get like pinged and pulled off to the side, but deserve another look. So some organizations like that are part of the task force have special open calls for returners. Others have turned their systems, their recruiting systems up a notch, and really can flag and say, oh, they had a gap, but they did all these great things. And so it's a whole new world for this space. If you're thinking about taking a break or you're on a break, there's so many resources out there and so many organizations that are looking for you. They're looking for you because you know what it's like to be in the workforce already, right? So they don't have to train you how to work well with others or to lead a meeting. So it's really, these skills are super important, just as important as your technical skills. But Jennifer, let's continue on. Can you share some successful characteristics or some characteristics of successful programs? So maybe a few top ones.
Sure. From an employer's viewpoint, I can say that naming one or more executive champions is absolutely essential to give the program clout and to help get it rooted. And I cannot tell you how many times I relied on my executive champion, who was a very high-level HR person inside of IBM, to be able to get through some roadblocks. And there will be roadblocks. It's the first time you're doing anything. And hopefully you'll learn from other people who have been there before you in other organizations, and you can help avoid some of them. But doing anything the first time, you are always going to run into some difficulties that you'll have to figure out how to jump over. And an executive champion is absolutely essential. Also, engaging and training your internal stakeholders. Those executive champions, the recruiters, the sourcers, the hiring managers, the learning and development team is absolutely critical, as hiring this type of talent is really different from traditional hiring done inside an organization. Things like, where do you even look for this talent is going to be different. This talent is not a college intern, so you're not going to go to university to go to job fairs. They aren't experienced professionals ending one job on a Friday and starting a new job in a new career on a Monday. So this group has taken a break, and every year that they're on a break, we have seen an increased, diminished sense of self, because they're detached from, they get more and more detached from their workplace identity. And so when you're out for 20 years, you might have a very big detachment that you need to help and overcome. And what we do is train all those stakeholders to understand where you look, how you go about recruiting, things like like a firing squad line where you have a conference room with 5 interviewers on one side of the table, even if it's a Zoom meeting, 5 people from your company and 1 relauncher, that situation is not going to work for a relauncher. So what are those different types of ways, and what are best practices for handling the sourcing and the recruiting? Just for examples. And this group is going to, again, even though they aren't experienced professionals ending one job on a Friday and coming on a Monday, they are experienced professionals. They've just had a break in what they've been doing. So it's important that all those stakeholders understand to respect that experience and know that they might have even more experience than the manager interviewing them has. Another tip, another success tip would be to definitely start out small and pilot small, 3, 5, no more than 10 people if possible, to be able to course correct along the way and build on that successful base to over time expand the program to increase the number of open roles, increase the types of roles, increase the number of locations, including geographies. I can give you so many examples of companies that have started with technical roles and they have expanded to things like sales and finance and technical sales and HR. The type of roles go along with that. The locations can be all over the United States, as well as Canada, and in any geography where your organization is hiring. Another, and this is be the last, and then I will end my, I could go on and on with tips, but the last I'll give is to leverage best practices from other employers who have existing programs. They have so much to learn, and connecting with an organization like iRelaunch and connecting with the STEM Reentry from that Jen and I are both involved with, connecting with SWE, are all organizations that can help provide those best practices to not only relaunchers looking to relaunch, but also to employers who are thinking of starting a program. And I think with that, I will open it up for some questions.
We do have one that talks about the executive champion. So an executive champion is tough to find if the company culture is not set up to promote upward mobility within the firm, which I think is sad. What suggestions do you have for finding someone to champion for you in such an environment?
So in an environment where there's very little upward mobility?
That's what the question says. I think so, you know, I will share from some of the task force companies in the initial calls we've had with organizations who are interested in setting up programs. And maybe it's not even the organizations. We've had internal employees who either returned on their own or think it's a great idea, really champion this internally and sometimes within a women's resource group, and kind of really worked hard to broaden the number of folks who are interested. And then that kind of raised the profile up to the executive champion level. But Jennifer, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say finding an executive champion in just at a high level is the same, no matter if there's upward mobility or not. You want to find a person who is as passionate about making a program succeed as you are, or even more so. And in my mind, I'll reiterate what Jen said. It's sad that an organization would not have upward mobility. I don't know how they keep employees in that environment, but to be able to create a program, it's the same no matter what the environment is. You really do need to find it. You can do it without it, but it's so much more difficult. And, you know, look in your high-level HR groups, look at your CTO, Look at your vice president of development or technology. So look into those line organizations that are hiring, that have technical roles in them. Or if you're at a company that
maybe now there's a lot more focus on DE&I, right? So maybe a diversity and inclusion leader, they might be more approachable than the CTO, CIO type of person.
that's a great idea. And then we have many program leads who lead their programs from the diversity and inclusion group. So absolutely.
A quick question was some of the organizations that are part of the task force. I'm sharing the reentry.swe.org link, and you can see the full list there, because I know I could not list all 35 of them, but obviously IBM, Dell, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon Technologies, Caterpillar, JPL is new, Apple, I'm totally missing a bunch, Honeywell, P&G. So there are a ton of companies with different types of backgrounds, and they are literally across the globe. So a great place is to look at SWE's website, reentry.swe.org, and you see members of the task force. And then iRelaunch.com, they actually track organizations, whether they work with them or not, across the globe who have return to work programs. Thanks, Jennifer. And I think that too, that is one of my favorite resources that iRelaunch has as well. And then there was another question from the app. What advice do you offer to someone who doesn't know how to get back from a big break, but has completed training and programs for a new career? Great question.
Great question. And I applaud you for having the courage to do this, number one. And there are a couple things you could do. The first is to tell everyone you know you are ready to get back into the workforce. Don't be shy about it. Talk about it. Tell people about it. And that sometimes is the impetus, and that's the hardest part, is admitting it, because the minute you admit it, you've told someone else and now you feel accountable. But it also acts as impetus to help you continue to do this. Join, there are so many places to look and join. Oh, number two, have a LinkedIn profile. So many employers look at LinkedIn profiles and fill out a LinkedIn profile. There's tons of YouTube videos on how to create a successful or an attractive into other people LinkedIn profile. So do a LinkedIn profile. Join meetup groups. There are a lot of the meetup groups have gone virtual. So let's say you're a software developer and there might be a meetup group for software developers in your area, and join that, something like that, and let the people know in your kind of cohort, in your meetup group, that you're looking for a new opportunity and looking to get back after a break. Join iRelaunch has a Facebook community that's huge. And we monitor some of the Facebook sites that we have with coaches who will give advice and counsel. Go to we have different tabs at the iRelaunch.com site, and one tab is dedicated for relaunchers. There's a return to work roadmap that you can follow, which is very popular. There are return to work conferences it's where we meet when you're ready to find a job or you're just thinking about it. We match relaunchers with employers of all different skills. And we have our first one coming up in the end of May, and our second conference of the year coming up in October. They're both virtual. So, and all those resources are on.
Also throw in one of Carol's favorites as well is contact your previous work colleagues. They remember how you were like, what you were like, to work with. They might be in higher positions now that you're able to enter the field, but those folks remember what you were like to work with and don't necessarily know you from your break time, when you were off, doing whatever, whether it was health issues or motherhood, and don't know you from running around, chasing after your family and all those things. So I think that's a really good tip as well. So again, we heard it in some earlier panels today about networking. It is very nerve-wracking, but it is a great way, and admitting that you're looking for your next position is a great way to get started. And then there are some more questions. So
Good.
can women negotiate pay equality when re-entering the job force? How can she make sure she's being paid industry rate that matches her level of education and expertise when she's left the job field for a while?
So another great question. You can look so much up now on the internet. There are so many different sources for industry going rates for certain skills. So number one, look that up. There are a ton of sites out there that you can find on the internet. And all programs handle this a little, not all, there are a number of different ways that employers handle compensation, and they're all paid programs. Some have flat rates during the cohort, the returnship, and then they are hired on at their the kind of industry rate when they've completed their cohort successfully. Other cohorts, other companies have their relaunchers have a salary that's very similar to a salary you would give someone if they were full-time, based on your background, your experience, your level of education, where you're located, the geography. All that's going to pay your yeah, I think I mentioned, all that is going to factor into the rate that you will get. But keep in mind that some programs handle this a little differently, and it's always appropriate to ask how compensation is handled. As well, some return to work programs offer benefits. Some benefits might be just complimentary vacation time. Other programs have full on benefits with health, and a lot of different other factors. So that's another question that's very appropriate to ask in an interview.
And I would say as well, Jennifer alluded to it or spoke about it, where the returnship program itself might have kind of a flat rate for everybody, but then once you're hired, they adjust for what your position will be. I will say that if you have received a special degree, a special certification, absolutely advocate for yourself. I have seen exceptions made for that additional education that your peers in the program might not have. But a general rule is they like to keep everyone kind of at the same pay rate during the returnship program, and then they'll change once the program is ended, and hopefully you move into full-time work. And then also, there was a point about implicit bias about older people in the tech industry, which I think, you're right, there is. But what will I say, I work with over 90 organizations globally. And again, one of the reasons why SWE was so excited to be a part of this program was bringing back folks who could jump into that middle manager and advance quickly into a more senior manager role. And I think that's where age comes into play in a positive way. And that's one of the points of the program. So many, as you've seen in the news, and you've seen some of the reports are right there on homepages. It doesn't look good when you look at gender equality as you move up the ranks, especially in technology and engineering. And so this is one of the programs they're hoping that will make their numbers look better. So I agree there is implicit bias. We hope that we're training folks in these returnship programs, the recruiters, the sourcers, managers to get beyond that. But one of the goals is to hire people that have had work experience and are a little bit older as well.
And also the point that with age, a lot of times comes experience. And as I mentioned before, you may end up with more experience than the manager that you're interviewing with. And so that's a very interesting discussion, but that comes up frequently. And I should say the majority, I would say the average amount of break time in years that we typically see with the task force companies and those 600 plus participants is probably 7-8 years of a career break. Some are younger in career break and some have more years. The most that I have ever worked with at IBM personally, I had one person with a 2-year career break at the lower end, because that's our minimum, and at the high end, a 25-year career break. And at the end of the cohort, the managers were fighting to be able to hire her. And we've had, along with the training of the stakeholders, I've had managers say, and I've heard this not just in my experience, but with other organizations, the managers will say, oh, I don't want to interview this person. They have 20-year career break. And that's the whole reason why we want you to interview this person, is because they offer this and they have so much to offer. And it's really a non-traditional way to find technical talent when it's so hard to find. So why not give it a try?
Absolutely. And I'm sorry I see someone, with a 21-year break feeling a little discouraged, but honestly, you are a perfect candidate. So seriously, put your name in the hat. Look at programs that are in your area. If you're ready, if you're able to relocate, look at places you'd relocate to. That's a little tougher, but companies, organizations are looking for you. So I know it seems daunting, but as Jennifer said, and I didn't know you had a 25-year breaker. I've always said 24 has been the top,
Oh,
but
25.
I have met quite a few of the 24 years, and some of them were just waiting for the right opportunity in the right location, and they were converted to full-time hires and are doing amazingly well at the organization.
One 20-year-old a career breaker that I worked with had her PhD, worked in research, and she was fantastic. Was an airplane pilot in her spare time, and just kept up in her field.
We have another question. Are more and more companies are willing to introduce returnship programs and participate in such efforts for providing a platform for returners? What would be their motivations to do so? Also, can you comment on how many men versus women are interested in these return to work programs?
Sure. I'm going to answer the last question first. And in the beginning, I made a quick comment that of our 28 past iRelaunch Return to Work conferences, 92% are women. I think that number over time is going to change as more and more men take career breaks, as society changes and is more encouraging of that. I think we'll see that change a bit, but for right now, our average, and it's been pretty standard, whether it was before COVID and we had in-person conferences or return to work conferences, the people looking for getting back to work and having career breaks are 92% women. And then the first question is, if I remember right, what is the motivation of companies to do this? So I will share what at IBM, my role was to improve the representation of mid-career diverse technical talent. And that level of skill, that it was notoriously horrible in the IT industry. It still is. And so this provides a non-traditional way to find talent that you would normally not have had access to. So it opens up a whole new way to access this diverse mid-career technical talent. And that's why more and more employers are so interested in this program.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, absolutely.
we're at 1 o'clock time. So I think I would officially, I need to, as a chair, I need to officially close it. But I'm pretty sure both Jennifers are maybe like willing to kind of hang out, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. I don't know. So yeah, if you're
I'm
willing,
fine.
yeah, well, if you're willing to hang out and we were officially done and then ask more questions, they're here. Yeah, and then we will, yeah, close this Zoom session like 1:05 so that you guys can get ready for the next session.
Well, to quickly close out, Jen, do you want to offer some comments?
Oh, a sweet advisor. Look at that.
Yay!
No,
Yay, Gretchen.
sorry. You know, Jennifer and I are here. We're co-directors of the STEM Reentry Task Force, iRelaunch.com, reentry.swe.org. We all have listservs and career centers and ways to help you as individuals, and then also, you know, working with companies to fill these spots. It's my passion project. It's something that, you know, I love that I do at SWE, and I am really, really thrilled to be able to work with a pilot program veteran and co-director, Jennifer Howland.
And thank you, Jen. And likewise, it's really an honor to work with you. And the last comment I wanted to make is this: I've done a lot of really interesting things in my career at IBM for 35 years. But this, by far, creating this tech reentry program and getting immersed in this return to work world and this whole industry, so to speak, it was life-changing. It was really the most rewarding experience working with the relaunchers, trying to find them, seeing them go through the process, working throughout the company and getting and garnering support. And everywhere you go, having people say, oh my gosh, what a great idea, and seeing it through fruition. And then now helping others, it's really been fantastic. And I want to wish all the soon-to-be relaunchers good luck in your mission, and remember all the resources you learned. And I want to tell all the people who might work for employers good luck, and make sure you, if you want to try to introduce this concept to your employer, it may take more than 2 months, as more than Jen gave me to join the task force all those years ago. But stick in there, and if you really feel this is important, just keep with it, and you'll hopefully have very good success.
And I'm just going to echo the last comment, one of them. Definitely, when you're thinking about LinkedIn profiles, I mentioned, you know, add your volunteer work, add PTA, add the certificates you're getting. But I also liked go out and get some LinkedIn recommendations. Again, going back to your old coworkers who could write one for you, or even professors that you've recently taken classes from, or volunteer organizations that you led initiatives for. Those recommendations are great. So thank you for sharing that in the chat. That was really, really awesome.
That is a great idea.
So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the conference. I'm going to go to my boss's session next, Carol Fishman-Cohen's, and I hope to see you all in some of the other sessions the rest of today and tomorrow. And Mickey, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. It was very inspiring. Yeah, I appreciate your efforts.
So helpful. Thank you.
Good, very good. Have a good rest of the Friday, and have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.